All right, let's go ahead and get started. Can you guys all hear me okay? Oh, perfect. All right. So welcome to Design 105 page layout tools. And actually, Shanley, I just read your message. Kind of curious what InDesign does since Photoshop is raster-based and Illustrator vector. Exactly. It is definitely a different tool. It deals in both, actually, as we're going to see in a minute, but it's for a very different use than either of those other applications. So I think you guys are going to enjoy it. It's a really cool program, and I'm excited to dig right into it today. A lot of you were in my course in Illustrator last mod. I have some new people as well. So welcome back, or welcome again. And we're going to be, first of all, going through an introduction to each other and to the class. For some of this will be repeat for those of you who were with me last mod. We need to make sure everyone knows about it. And then we're going to talk about the discussion and the assignment, the assessment, and we're going to dig into InDesign itself. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Jason Merrill. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah. I've been a graphic designer for more than 20 years now, and I've been a graphic design instructor for more than 9 years. Worked here at this college for more than 9 years, and I'm also one of the associate deans and the faculty program advisors. So some of you probably know me from that angle as well as me being your FPA. I have a pretty diverse background. I did print work when I was in high school, actually, where I first got started with that, and did illustration and animation. I actually mentored with a Disney animator after high school. Ended up working for Apple Computers for a while, training professionals, design professionals, and film professionals, all sorts of photography professionals, all sorts of different things there. In addition to doing this design stuff, I actually still run a Apple consulting company where I have companies and individuals that pay me to go to their house or to their company and help them with anything that has to do with Apple stuff, so Macs or iPhones, iPads, that sort of thing. And I absolutely love technology. I love art. I love design. And this is just a great intersection of all those things. To answer your question, I never got in with Disney. It was actually just one Disney animator, a guy named Ron DES, who'd been working with Disney since Sleeping Beauty. I met him when he was at a speaking engagement at a university here by me, and he saw some of my work, and he ended up liking it. And so for a few years, he would just send me, he'd send me like documents and things from Disney, training things and guides and stuff like that, and then I would send him back work that I was working on, and he'd give me feedback and stuff. So it was not a job, very much like a mentorship, which was a lot of fun. He was a fantastic guy. And I also have a background. I write. My first degree was actually English literature. I love writing. I love reading, and I actually do write training guides still. And InDesign has a lot to do with text and books, and so you're going to see as we get into this. And so it's one area that I particularly love working. So Creative Cloud isn't just an Apple thing, it's an Adobe thing. And so if you're singing things on Creative Cloud, it will go to Mac, to Windows, to mobile, all over the place. Yeah. All right, so that's me. Now, just to get to know some of you guys again, some of you already know this, but just bear with me and repeat on there. But if you just write in the chats there, whether you're a graphic design major or a web design major, what Adobe products you've learned so far. And then this one's not for you to answer. This is just for you to do on your own. If you haven't checked yet, make sure that you're up to date for InDesign. If you're on a Mac, you've got the Adobe icon up here in your menu bar. It looks kind of like this figure 8 falling on its side. If you're on a Windows computer, it's down in the bottom of the taskbar. Just click on that and go to the Apps tab. And if InDesign says Update next to it, then click on that to update. If it just says Open, you've got it, then it's already up to date. Okay. All right. So far, everyone, graphic design, great. Looks like Photoshop and Illustrator. Most of you should be in here have learned those ones. Procreate as well for Sean Lee. That's great. And the reason I ask for the graphic design or web design is we get both in here. Graphic design majors are on Macs and Windows, or the web design majors are on Windows computers. InDesign works the same in both of them. The only difference, there's like little tiny differences that I'll bring up as we hit them, but I can summarize them really easily right now just by telling you that if I tell you to hit the Option key on a Mac, that's the Alt key on a Windows computer. If I say hit Command on a Mac, it's Control on a Windows computer. For example, Command C is copy on a Mac, where Control C is copy on a Windows computer. And then the last thing is the preferences are under a different menu, which I'll show you. Oh, and actually one more thing is a naming thing, and that is the Return key on a Mac is called the Enter key on Windows, but they're the same thing. So, all right. Let's jump into the classroom then, talk about a few things in there. All right. So one thing I always point out right in the beginning, because I always see at least one student have some reason for this, so I want to make sure you're aware of it. If you're ever having a problem with the website itself, like say you're trying to submit an assignment and it's not letting you do it, it's giving you an error or something like that, or maybe you're trying to embed an image with your discussion post and that's not working correctly. If there's ever anything going on with the actual website of our class, if you click over here on this little question mark that says help, you've got an option for calling Canvas support hotline for students. Phone number's right here. Or down here you can click to chat online with Canvas support for students as well. Just do a live chat with them. That's the support team that specifically handles the class websites. So they're going to be the ones who can give you quick answers and help you solve problems quickly that have to do with the website itself. Now they can't help you if you're having a problem with InDesign. They can't help you, if you have a question about the assignment. They're specifically there for technical support for the website, for the class website. Okay, so keep that in mind in case that comes up during the mod at all. Another thing here in the class, on the main page, we've got this link here that says about the instructor. This has basically the same information that I just went over with you, but it also has my email address and my phone number in here. So that I like to point out that if you're looking to get a hold of me, this is where you can find that contact information. Because I'm also an associate dean and one of the FPAs, I am on phone calls or meetings quite a lot. So if you call me, there's a very good chance you're going to get my voicemail, and that's totally fine. Just leave a voicemail for me, and I'll call you back when I get it. But if you email me, those go to my email on my computer and on my phone. So a lot of times, if I'm in a situation where I couldn't answer a call or call someone back, I can respond to an email. Like if I'm sitting in a meeting just listening to someone talk and I get an email coming in, I'll pull that email up and shoot off a response. So the best way to get a quick answer from me is generally to send me an email, but definitely feel free to call me if you need to talk to me on the phone and prefer to talk that way. Okay. All right. Now let's talk about the things that we're going to be, where we're going to be getting our information for this class, where we're going to be looking at the things we need to know in order to do the assignments and learn InDesign. First of all, on the live sessions link on that front page, if we scroll down, every week there's going to be 2 lectures. The first lecture is pre-recorded, so it's there for every single week already right now. So make sure you're watching that first lecture. It's going to fill in some details that I'm going to either touch lightly on in this live session or that I may not even talk about at all because I know it's in the other lecture. So make sure to watch that. And then the second one is what you're watching right now. This is going to be the live session. And so after I finish the live session every week, I'll put the recording link here under lecture 2 for the week. I also tend to put the recording link in the announcements, and I also email it out too. So you shouldn't have any trouble finding the recording link to the live lecture. But just don't get confused by them. Some people will watch lecture 1 and then come to me and say, I didn't understand the instructions for the assignment. And that's because there's rarely going to be detailed instructions for the assignment or assessment or things like that in lecture 1. That's going to be handled in lecture 2 in this live session. So you need to make sure to watch that one. Okay. Going back to the home page, there's another link here that says readings and videos. If we click on readings and videos, this takes us to some additional things for us to watch or read for information for the week. Now, at the top of each week in this class, it has that pre-recorded lecture again, that lecture 1. So don't worry. Don't go, oh my gosh, there's another really long one here. This is the same one that's in that live session page. You don't need to watch it twice. They just have it in both places. But down below that, there are a list of some shorter videos and readings that are well worth your time. There's some really good ones. Now, they've got it divided up by required and then optional for each week. So optional is just going to, it's great to get in there. It's going to have some additional information to help make you even more of a pro with InDesign, but it's not required. Just the stuff under required is required. Okay. Now, some of these are on lynda.com, and I know that a lot of you have accessed lynda.com before, especially those who were in my class last mod. But lynda.com, if you haven't accessed it yet, it is a tremendous resource, has tons and tons of fantastic videos on so many topics you wouldn't even believe it. You can go in there and learn just about anything you want. And we have a license with them for the school, so we give all the students access to that full lynda.com library, and we use it in classes, and also you can access it to just do things on your own if you want to. But it's got some great information in there. Now, the downside to lynda.com is that the way that they are set up to work with schools right now, it's a little annoying to get into. Yeah, just like you were saying, Shirley, it's a little complex. Once you've done it a couple times, it's not that big of a deal, but the first couple times it can be a little bit of a what am I doing here? So I want to just demonstrate accessing lynda.com one time, so you can, if you're going in to do your videos and you're having trouble, just come back to this live session and look for my clock to say 12:42 p.m. and you'll know that's about when I demonstrated getting in there. So here's what we do. So you can see right here, it says getting started with InDesign is a lynda.com video. So I'm going to click this link next to it. It says Student Access Portal. Okay. I'm going to click on that. That takes me to this page here. And on this page, I have a playlist for every single week. Okay. I've got, so each of these has all the videos that are in both the required and optional for each week in this class. But the problem is if I just click the playlist link, it's going to take me to lynda.com. It's going to take me to the playlist even. But if you look up here, you see how it says sign in. I'm not signed in. And lynda.com is a paid service. So if I try to watch this video, it's going to say, hey, you should subscribe because this video is great and you'll get all the other ones too. And you don't need to subscribe. We have it set up for you through the school. But you just can't go to it directly that way. So here's how we need to get into lynda.com. Going back to this page here where the playlists are. I'm going to hold down either Command on a Mac or Control on a Windows computer while I click this link right up here that says click here. Okay. By doing that, it opens that link in another tab in my browser. So rather than go away from this page, because I'm going to need to come back to these playlists once I'm logged in, it just opens a new tab with that link in it for me. Okay. So I'm going to go to my new tab, and I'm looking for this link right here that says lynda.com Student Access Portal. It's the one that's indented a little bit from the other ones. When I click on that, it's going to take me to a page that just has one button right here, Load lynda.com Student Access Portal. When I click on that, it's going to open up lynda.com, and it's going to log me in. So you can see right here, it says, Hi, Jason now. Now that I'm logged in, I don't want to close this page because I need to stay logged in. So I'm going to go back over to my first tab, the one that had those playlist links in it, and I'm going to click a link for a playlist, and that'll take me to lynda.com to that playlist while logged in. So now I can watch these. Okay. So again, it's a little bit convoluted, but if you do it a couple of times, it's not a big deal. Yeah, exactly, Shonali. You don't enter any sign info. In fact, we don't even have sign in info to enter. It's actually a automatic check that it's kind of like a handshake that lynda.com does with Canvas when you click that link. when you click that login link here, Canvas talks to Linda and says, hey, Shauna Lee McKean's trying to access you, and gives it your, gives it your authentication. And then Linda goes, okay, great, we're ready to work with it. So yeah, we don't even have usernames or password for this. It'd actually be nicer if we did, be a little more simple. But as it is, this is all that lynda.com set up for as far as these school link ups. So anyway, come back and watch this again if you have any trouble getting into it, but it's well worth doing. The videos are fantastic. Okay, so those are the combination of those videos in the readings and videos section, and then the live session, or the sessions in the live session tab. Those are all of your content for every week. And as long as you do those, you should have all the information you need in order to really do well in InDesign. Okay, so any questions on that so far? Okay. Let's talk next then about the announcements. So I'm going to go over and click on the announcements here, and every single week I'm going to be posting some announcements in here, and they're all important things. So just do me a favor, and whenever you come into the class, just pop into the announcements and see if there's anything new that you haven't seen so far, and take a look at it if there is. Right now there are a couple of things in here that I want to point out specifically to you, and they have to do with getting additional help in this class, okay? So my #1 goal in this class is that you finish this mod feeling like you understand the basics of InDesign, feeling like you are able to work in the basic functions of InDesign and know what you're doing. Okay, so knowledge is your #1 goal here. Getting a great grade, yeah, you absolutely want to get a great grade. But the reality of it is, if you got an A in this class but didn't really understand how to use InDesign, or you got a C in this class but actually understood it really well, that the C in understanding it really well would actually be a better position to be in going forward, because you're going to use InDesign a lot in your future classes. Okay, so if you're working on an assignment or an assessment or anything, and you're hitting a wall and you're like, I don't really understand this part, don't just skip over it or breeze past it. Come get some help, because we really want you to understand it, and because you'll need to understand it in future classes and in your career. InDesign is an enormously used tool in our industry. Okay, so we've got a lot of resources in order for you to get some help if you're struggling with anything. One of them is the multi-session that I'm going to hold every week, and that is on Thursdays at the same time that we're having this live session today. So 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. Mountain Time on Thursdays, I'm going to have what's called a multi-session. The multi-session is just a time where I am in this Zoom classroom available to help if anyone needs any help. There's no lecture, nothing's recorded. You don't need to come in if you don't need some help. It's just basically time set aside for me to be here to work one-on-one with any of you that may need some one-on-one help, or running into an issue and want some assistance. Okay, so that's one thing that you're going to get some assistance from, is that multi-session on Thursdays from 12:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Yeah, Beth Christie, we're going to talk about her in just a sec. So, but before we leave multi-sessions, let's just say that you're like, well, that sounds great, but I'm working on Thursdays at that time, or I don't have the ability to get in at that time. Well, the good news is it's not the only multi-session. We've got an announcement here that says 100 level multi-session schedule for Mod 1. So the one on Thursday is the one that I'm hosting, but a lot of the teachers host multi-sessions, and you are able to go to any of them. It doesn't need to be the one hosted by me. You can go in to get help for this class in any of the multi-sessions. If you go into this announcement, there's a link down here for a PDF. If I open that PDF, I get a schedule and links to all the multi-sessions. So over here is the schedule, right? We got Monday through Saturday, and on each day we've got the times. Now the times aren't listed here in chronological order. They're actually listed in the name of the instructor, the order the instruction names are. So for example, the first one on Tuesday says 5:30 p.m. and then down below is 9 a.m. So look through them all to see what times. You can see they've got times all over the place. They've got times in the mornings, times in the evenings, times in the afternoon, and they've got times available Tuesday through Friday for these multi-sessions, okay? You can, if you, let's say that you find that the 9 a.m. on Wednesday one's gonna work best for you, you can just go to the left, and the link is the one just to the left of that. You click on that link, it'll take you right into that multi-session. And just to the left of that, you can see the name of the instructor that's teaching it. To the left of that, you can see the class that instructor is teaching this mod. But again, that doesn't matter for getting one-on-one help. All of us have taught this class. All of us know Illustrator, or sorry, know InDesign and know these assignments backward and forward. So any of us can help you if you need help. Okay? So any questions at all on the multi-sessions? Okay. So going back to the announcements, let's just say you look over the multi-session schedule and none of those times really work well for you either, okay? Another resource that we have for some one-on-one help is our learning coach, who, as Beth was talking about, is Christy Paulson. I've got an announcement here that says our learning coach's week 1 schedule. And Christy, she is fantastic. I've worked with her many times. Think of her like a tutor, basically. She is here to be available if you need some help in order to assist you. Every week, I'm going to be posting her schedule and her contact information in the announcements. So this week, you can see she's available from 12 to 7 p.m. on Wednesday, and from 12 to 5 p.m. on Thursday. And then her contact information is down there in the lower right. If you want to meet with her, I'd recommend contacting her, letting her know you'd like to meet, and like setting up kind of a time that you're gonna meet up with her during her available times then. Okay. So that's another resource that we have for help if you need some. So before we move on though, let's just say that you look at all those, it's like, you know what, I just have a crazy work schedule, none of that's gonna work, but I really need some help. There is one more resource available, and that is the Student Success Center. So here on our homepage, we've got a link that says Student Success Center. If I click on that, right here is where I click to get into it, but I want to click on this one over here that says Hours of Operation. And under there, I'm going to click Graphic Arts. And you can see they have very broad hours, and they change as the weeks change, so make sure to look at the right week. But a lot of nights they're open, I mean, you know what, Thursday they're open till 11, Friday till 11, Saturday till 10, 9 on Wednesday, 11 tonight. Just have a gap between 4 and 5 when they're not there today. So lots of availability in the Student Success Center. The Student Success Center is manned by learning coaches, just like Christy. If you can make it to a multi-session or to work with Christy, that's ideal because we're specifically working with this course where these guys are going to be a little more general, but they are great resources as well if you need some help with them. Yeah, and we have weekend help as well. They're available every Saturday. Okay. So those are some resources that you have for help. One more thing, actually, before I leave that topic, in the announcements again, I have another announcement I post. It says video walkthrough on accessing the Student Success Center and Writing Center. Getting into the Student Success Center is a little different. It's not like going into a Zoom room. So if you click this link, there's a little video that tells you exactly how to get in there if you're having any trouble accessing it. Okay. So lots of resources for help. And again, please make use of them if you need them. Any questions at all on how to get help if you need it during the class? All right. Sounds good. Let's jump back over here then. Let's talk about some of the requirements for the class. Every single week, we're going to have a discussion, a graded discussion. On our graded discussions, there's a prompt in each one of them, and you're going to do an initial post, the first post that answers all the questions in that prompt. That initial post needs to be at least 150 words long. It needs to have a citation, and it needs to be done by Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. Okay, so this is a little different than everything else. It's not the end of the week. That first post needs to be done Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time to get full credit. Then you're going to read over the posts that your classmates have put in there, and you're going to do at least 2 responses to their posts. And those responses need to be at least 50 words long, and they need to add to the conversation. So don't just say, oh, I agree, or great post, but actually like discuss what they wrote and what your thoughts are on it, you know, add to it or give a different point of view on it or anything like that. Okay. And then remember, to get full credit on these discussion posts, you need to do some sort of participation on at least 2 days of the week. So don't just go on Wednesday and do all 3 of them and then call it good. It's not a big deduction, but there's a couple of points you lose for that. So just make sure that you're spreading out your participation between at least 2 days of the week in one way or another. Okay. So those are the discussions. Any questions on the requirements for the discussions? All right. Now the assignments and the assessments. All the assignments and assessments are due on Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. Okay. If they're not in on time, there's a deduction in points for being late. So if something's happening that's going to keep you from being on time, and it's a significant thing, something like, you know, maybe you're really sick, or your, you know, child's in the hospital, or you know, anything, you know, the internet's been out for 2 days because of a storm, you know, that sort of thing, please contact me before the project's due so we can make some arrangements. And I can't make arrangements with everything, you know, unfortunately I do, you know, it's got to be something that is kind of out of your control like that, extraordinary like that. But if you're experiencing a situation like that, please contact me and we can talk about making some arrangements. But otherwise, 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time on Saturdays are the due date. Okay. Now, those of you who had me last mod already know this, and that is, you know, I feel very strongly about the getting in the habit of doing revisions. In our field, revisions are a very big part of our job. I've never done a job in my life that didn't have at least 1 round of revisions, and I probably never did one that just had 1 round. There's usually more than that. And so it's a big part of what we do. And I want to get you guys in the habit of it and thinking about, you know, making revisions as things need to be changed. So because of that, if you turn in your assignment, and I put assessments here with an asterisk because this only qualifies if it's a project-based assessment. If it's a quiz, this doesn't count for quizzes. But if it's a project-based assessment, same thing. But if you turn in your assignment or your project-based assessment and you lose some points for something, and you want to get those points back, I'm always going to write in the rubric specific details of why those points were lost. So if you will just read that and then revise your work to fix those things and resubmit it, I will regrade it and I'll adjust your score. So points lost do not need to be a permanent thing. If you lost some points, you want to get them back, revise it accordingly, resubmit it, and you can get those points back. Okay? We already talked about the multi-sessions. Yep. Several of you took advantage of that last mod, which is great. And we already talked about how to get a hold of me. So that's our whole introduction to the class. Any questions for me about any of that at all before we jump into InDesign itself? All right. Okay, then let's talk about InDesign. You know, the class is called Page Layout Tools. Does anyone have any idea what that means? Anyone idea what page layout means? A brochure is an example of page layout. Yeah, absolutely. Where information is placed, that's a good description of it for sure. Websites and newspapers are definitely examples of page layout. Yeah. All page layout is exactly like Beth said, how it's placed, page setup. It's taking the different elements, it's taking the text, it's taking the images, it's taking the logo, taking the magazine banner, taking all the different elements that we want to be a part of this finished project and organizing them on the page, designing the page with those elements in place. Okay. So, you know, if any magazine that you see out there was almost certainly laid out in InDesign. Any book, InDesign. Newspapers, InDesign. Movie posters, InDesign. Brochures, flyers, pamphlets, InDesign. Packaging in the stores, InDesign. Anytime where what you're dealing with is a combination of different elements of text, images, maybe vector artwork that was done, those sort of things, InDesign is generally the best tool for the final project of that. So it's interesting because a lot of people, you know, like as we're going through, you guys did your Photoshop, you did your Illustrator, and there's always this compare and contrast. Well, Photoshop does this, Illustrator does this. The thing about InDesign is it's kind of like your last stop. You'll very often be laying out in InDesign something that you previously used Photoshop for some of the elements for. You may have previously used Illustrator for some of the elements for. You may have previously used Word to write some text in. The other applications where I'll use to create the individual content, and then InDesign is where we're taking all those finished pieces and putting them together into one final product. Yeah, because content management's a similar term to it, yeah. Although this is the actual finished project, it's not just the behind the scenes thing. This is the actual file creation for the finished project. You know, if you're doing a 120-page magazine, that whole magazine is going to be in one InDesign file, right? Both printed or website. Printed is definitely the most common historically, but a lot more things like websites and app development things are being done in InDesign now as well. They've put a lot of additional features in for those sort of things. So with a web-based page layout, generally you'd use InDesign. There is some basic interactivity in InDesign, but more likely it would be used to create a mock-up. Like basically something you would then hand to the coders so they knew what it was supposed to look like and what the flow of information was supposed to be like. I mean, well, a template's more like something that they're reusing, that like they're swapping out information in. Think of this as the best term is a mock-up. This is basically what you're saying. This is it. I have made this exactly the way that I want it to look. When you click this, I want it to go to a page that's going to look exactly like this. When you click this, I want it to go to a page that looks exactly like this. And InDesign is where people would create those mock-ups of those looks that then would be coded later. But again, there is some basic interactivity you can build into it. Though primarily in this mod, we're going to be looking at print stuff. We're going to talk about some web stuff in the discussions and things. But most of the assignments we're going to be doing are going to be more print-based for this class. All right. So yeah, those of you who were in my Illustrator class last mod, if you watched the lesson that Mike Dunlop did the live session for, and he was talking about text in Illustrator, and he was talking about how Illustrator is a fantastic, basically Photoshop is a pretty poor text tool, unless you're just doing like a big, couple words bigger and just kind of laying it out. But if you're laying out a paragraph or more, Photoshop's not a good tool for it. Illustrator is actually a really good text tool. And it can do some things like creating outlines and doing vector manipulation of text that's even better in Illustrator than it is in InDesign. But as far as actual, just laying out text in the way that we normally lay out text, doing paragraphs, doing pages, doing headlines, doing subheadlines, none of them touch InDesign. InDesign is the king of them. It's the king of text. And you're going to see as we work through some of these projects, we're going to talk about some pretty advanced and pretty incredible text features that will make your life a lot easier when creating things with text. Okay. So, any questions about those generalities about InDesign before we move on and take a look at our discussion? Okay. So, well, first of all, these are our learning objectives this week. So the things we're going to be going through, both in the videos and then through your assignments and assessment discussion, the goal of them is to have at the end of this week you've addressed these learning issues. One is to define how InDesign is used in the field and describe 5 scenarios of when it would be used. Identify and match 10 basic tools to the description of their use. Identify and match 5 InDesign panels to their functions. Create a new document in InDesign and insert text frames and images. Describe the difference between InDesign's rectangle tool and the rectangle frame tool, which is a big difference. We're going to talk about that today. Utilize the rectangle, oval, and line tools to create composition in InDesign, which those are exactly the same as the tools in Illustrator. The basic vector tools in InDesign are the same as Illustrator. Illustrator just has more of them. Utilize InDesign's character panel to apply changes to font size, kerning, tracking, and leading. And then illustrate how to utilize the color palette within InDesign. And prepare an InDesign document for print output using the package tool. Now that's a big one. That's the last thing we're going to talk about before we call it a day today. But it's a requirement for every single one of your assignments in this class. So definitely make sure to watch that. It's the thing that I see people most often forget to do and most often lose points from. So just remember that with the package tool. And then we're going to talk about how to show correct image resizing and cropping methods within InDesign. Okay. So let's jump back to the classroom and let's talk about our discussion for this week. So we've got 2 discussions this week. One of them is not graded. I'd still ask you to participate. It's just a good way for us to get to know each other. It's this one here called Introduce Yourself, You the Artist. So again, no grade is tied to this one, but just please go ahead and take a minute and just, answer the prompt here so we can get to know each other a little bit better. The graded one, though, is the one underneath that. Whoops, went to the wrong place there. That is called the Week 1 discussion, InDesign in Field. Okay. So if we go there, I'm going to skip over the background, but please make sure and read that. It's got good information in it. Down here under the prompt, it says, for this discussion, we will look at InDesign and how it is used in field today. You might try a job website like monster.com. Consider checking a few others like Indeed, the Art Career Project, or any job listing resource you know of. Use InDesign as a keyword for your search and take note of the job titles and descriptions that come up. Are any of these listings something you might be interested in? Why or why not? And in your post, write about one of the positions you found and list the job duties that require InDesign knowledge as a skill. So it's kind of a two-part discussion. I just read to here. I want to talk about that part real quick before we go on to the second part. So basically, you're just going to go to any job board search. I'm going to do monster.com, the one that's already on there. And down here, I'm going to say that I'm going to type InDesign in the keyword field. And then over here, I'm actually just going to do all of the Salt Lake County. So it's looking at the whole area around me here. Now, here's InDesign jobs in Salt Lake County. 18 jobs were found. So right now, at this moment, just on this one job site, there are 18 jobs in my county alone that specifically list InDesign in their job listing. Okay, and you use marketing proposal manager, admin clerical, change analyst, civil designer, front-end web developer, graphic design internship, whole bunch of them. So you're going to basically do that search, and then you're going to pick one of these. Maybe I want to look at this senior creative designer for ZAG. I can click on that, and you're going to read through the description. And somewhere in here, you're going to see where they talked about InDesign. Let's see if I can find it down here under skills or qualifications. Here we go. Advanced proficiency with all aspects of Adobe Creative Cloud, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, etc. Okay. So you're going to read through this description, and then in the discussion, you're going to answer the question, talk about what it was you found, what was the job that you found, and then is it something you might be interested in, or why not? Okay. So any questions on that first part of the discussion? Okay. So the second part, and a lot of people miss this one. That's why I want to step apart. No, you don't need an example for ball channeling. It's more like just whatever way you feel about it. If you feel like you would be interested, why? If you feel like you wouldn't, why not? Yeah. So the second part, after that, it says list ideas of how you will become a Power InDesign user so you can be hired. For example, to become a Power InDesign user, I'll learn one InDesign shortcut a day. Discuss why you feel your methods will be successful. So basically, think of some plan, some strategy you can implement that will make sure that by the time you're out there looking for these jobs and applying for these jobs, that you're the one they're going to want. What's going to make you the InDesign pro that they're going to want to hire? Okay. So that's the discussion for this week. Any questions on the requirements for the discussion? All right. So again, make sure you're doing your initial post, so your answer to that prompt by tomorrow, by Wednesday, 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. And then make sure you're doing at least 2 responses to other people's posts by Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. And then also, as I said, make sure you're doing something on at least 2 days of the week. Don't just do it all in one day. Okay? All right, let's take a look at our assessment next then. The assessment this week is a quiz. It says InDesign tools and terms. Make sure you watch the first lecture 1, before taking this assessment, because a lot of these things they cover in that. Okay? So it's going to be 11 questions long, and it talks about identifying and matching 10 basic tools to the description of use, identify and matching 5 InDesign panels with their function, describe the difference between InDesign's rectangle tool and rectangle frame tool, and creating a new document in InDesign and inserting text frames and images. Okay, so just a regular quiz, but make sure you've watched that lecture 1 before going and doing it. Okay, any questions on that? All right. Well, then what I'd like to do now, this would be a good time for us to take our break. And when we come back, we're going to dig right into the assignment, and we're also going to get right into InDesign. We're going to do some demonstrations, show you all the things that you need to know in order to successfully do the assignment. Okay. Before that, though, I'm just going to set a timer. Whoop, not what I meant to do. So I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes. Go, get a drink or stretch your legs, whatever you need to do. And I'll see you back here in 15 to jump into InDesign and into the assignment. Oh, wrong button there. All right, we are back. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. All right, so we're going to jump into InDesign in just a minute. But before we do that, I want to go over what the assignment is. And the reason why is I want you to be thinking about the assignment while we're working in InDesign, so you can ask me any questions that may come up in your thoughts of what you're going to need to do for the assignment. So as we go through this, I understand that you don't know how to do it yet. Don't worry about that. We're going to go over the how. I just want to focus on the what right now, so you guys have a clear idea of what you're doing for this week's assignment, okay? So we're going to be starting a menu design. Now, I say starting because this assignment is actually going to continue on in week 2. You're going to be finishing the menu design in week 2 that you started this week, okay? This week, we are specifically going to be working on the cover of the menu. Now, I want to make that clear right from the beginning, and I'm going to show you why in a minute. One of the most common misunderstandings for this assignment, and one of the reasons, the most common reasons people lose points from this, is by thinking that you're doing a cover and an inside page this week. But you're not. You're not doing any inside page at all this week. The inside page is going to be next week. This week, you are working on cover, but you are specifically doing 2 versions of the cover, okay? In our fields, it's very, very common for us to, do multiple versions of a logo or a brochure or whatever, we're doing, so that we can then show the clients the different directions that we're thinking of, and they can pick the one that they are most feeling, the one that they want to continue on with. So because of that, you want to think of these as two menu covers for the same client, but 2 different takes on the menu cover, 2 different designs for the menu cover, so that you would then go show this to your client and say, so one thing I was thinking is we go this way, another thing I was thinking we go this way, and your client can say, oh, I actually really like the second direction there. Let's develop that and finish making the menu. Does that make sense? Okay. So again, no inside page. And you're going to see as we look at this why people would get confused and think we're doing an inside page, but no inside page. That's going to be next week. Okay. So again, make sure and read this background. Cover only. Yep, and two versions of the cover, so 2 covers basically, but the same restaurant. So down here in the prompt, it says, for this assignment, you're going to create some cover designs for a menu. For the week 2 assignment, you will do the rest of the menu design, maintaining the styles introduced in the cover. In the field of graphic arts, we frequently give the client more than one option to choose from. Therefore, this week, you will be designing 2 versions from the same menu cover. Now it says, step 1 here says, review the 3 menu options below. We're going to look at that in a minute. You have 3 different restaurants that you're going to pick one from. So you're going to choose what restaurant you're working on this week and next. Once you've done that, you're going to choose, so you're going to review them, then you're going to choose one of them. You're going to create a new InDesign document with these specifications. And again, we're going to go through and talk about how to do that when we get into InDesign, but we're going to set up with those exact specifications. Use the logo and the tagline from your chosen restaurant and create a menu cover layout. You can add colored or patterned backgrounds. You can utilize the photos that we provide for you, or you don't have to use the photos. I'm going to show you, we're going to talk about photos in a minute. You can add lines, you can add shapes. It can be as simple or as complicated as you think warrants, but it needs to look like a complete menu cover. So if you're going simple, make sure it looks like purposefully simple, as a complete menu cover, not just unfinished. Then you're going to go to page 2 and you're going to create a second version of your cover. Consider trying different background or experiment with different opacities, colors, and type combinations. And it says, remember, whatever you start here is going to carry over to next week's assignment. So be thinking about that, the styles, because you're going to do an inner page for one of these next week. Okay. And then for every single one of these, they give you examples Don't copy them. The examples are just there to give you like a basic idea of what we're talking about, but you're going to come up with your own design. Okay. So it says right here, if you copy the layout from the example, your creativity score on the rubric is going to be low. Then you're going to package the file when you're done, which we're going to talk about today, and zip that and submit that file. Okay. So before we go look at the three restaurants, any questions about just a general idea of what you're doing with this assignment? Okay. So down here, it's got all three of the restaurants. I'm going to pull up, I've moved that information to this PowerPoint slide. So I'm going to go to PowerPoint. This is the same information that is in the assignment description though. So don't worry about taking notes or writing down, it's all there. But the first restaurant you can choose, the first one's called Maxwell's. Now, as I read these, I want you to be thinking in your head, picturing what this restaurant is like and picturing some adjectives that would describe the restaurant. Because one thing we want to do when we're creating our designs, we want to create a menu cover that works for the restaurant. So we want our menu cover to feel like it matches the feeling and ambiance that the restaurant is going for. Okay, so think of some adjectives as we go through these. So choice one is Maxwell's, which is a fine steak and seafood restaurant. Maxwell's has graced downtown Atlanta for more than 80 years. Since they're known worldwide for their overall customer experience, there's a 6-month waiting list for reservations. All staff is in tuxedos, and crisp white linens grace the candlelit tables. The entrees range anywhere from $52 to $82 an entree, with all the side dishes served a la carte, meaning you buy the sides separately. That's just for the main, the $52 to $82. So this truly exemplifies what a fine dining experience means. Okay, so with that said, what are some adjectives that come to your mind that might describe Maxwell's as a restaurant? Upper class, yeah, I would say absolutely. Anything else? So I'd say expensive. That's one that would come to my mind. This is an expensive place. This isn't cheap. This isn't somewhere you're taking the family because y'all feel like going to dinner on Tuesday night. This is more of a, Valentine's Day or getting ready to propose to your girlfriend type of a place to go, right? Long time wait. Proper, rich, fancy, quiet, and professional. Absolutely. I'd say those are all tied to it. So with those things in mind and with the picture of Maxwell's that you have in your head, I'm going to kind of come to Google and I'm going to search steak menu or steak restaurant menu cover. Okay. So knowing what you know about Maxwell's, would you say that their menu looks like this? Yeah, probably not, right? This is a much more casual, just light fare sort of a place. A place like Maxwell's is probably going to have something more along the lines of this. Maybe something like that. So again, that's what I mean by you want to be keeping the feeling of the restaurant in mind when you are creating your design, because overall this menu has to work well in their restaurant. The client needs to look at it and say, I'd love to show that to my customers, right? The customers need to look at it and think, oh yeah, here I am at Maxwell's or whatever one you choose. This menu, makes me excited to look at the menu and see what I'm going to order, right? Yeah, simple. They generally do tend to go with simple more, for sure. All right, so that's restaurant number one, Maxwell's. Now, in every single restaurant, you are going to get a package. Let me show you. So right here, every one of them has things that says click here to download the Maxwell's assets, the next one's assets. They all have a little download for their assets. Their assets, some of them have a couple of different things in them, but for the most part, they're the same. Here's Maxwell's assets. So you can see it contains a few things. One, it contains Maxwell's logo. So like it said, that's required. Don't come up with your own logo for Maxwell's. they've already paid for a logo. This is their logo. Everyone knows it. They want you to use their logo. Okay, so that's another thing we're gonna have to work around with all of these ones. So you're gonna have their logo file. Now, keep in mind, this has the files for both weeks, this week and next week. So here's where people get confused. It's got some example pictures. One of them's the cover. One of them's the inner page. But that's because this is for both weeks, not just this week. It also has two text files. One of them says Maxwell's menu cover text. So this text needs to be on the menu cover. Don't put the word logo. That just means don't forget the logo needs to be there. But the fine steaks and seafood is their subtitle, needs to go near their logo. You've got their address, their phone number, and their hours. All that needs to be on the cover, okay? And each one of the restaurants has their own menu cover text that needs to be on the cover, okay? The other text file in here has all the text for the inner page. Again, ignore that completely this week. That's just for next week, okay? So you're just using the menu cover text this week. In addition to that, it has some images, some image files. These are the ones that it has for Maxwell's. Now here's the thing. These images with the cover, you can use these, one or more of these. You can use none of these. You can have no images but the logo on your cover, or you can use your own images. Like, these are not required. We're just providing them so you have some to pick from if you want to, right? If you want to look for your own images, there's a great website called pexels.com. I'm going to type it in the chat here. It's PEXELS.com. Oh, it always wants to correct it to pixels, but that is not what it is. Okay. What you don't want, if you're finding your own images, what you don't want is low resolution images that are going to be all pixelated. You don't want images with watermarks on them that say they're from Adobe stock, right? You want good, clean, high-resolution images. This website, Pexels, provides good, clean, high-resolution images for free. Okay, so this is a great resource when you're looking for images for your work. You come here, let's say that I'm doing Maxwell's. I could search, for example, steak. And you'll see it pulls up a whole bunch of steak images that I can choose between. Now, the way they support themselves is advertising, so you'll get to a certain point where it says sponsored photos. All these ones are from Adobe stock, and if you click them, they'll take you to them and ask you to pay for them. But these ones up here are all free, right? So I can come through here. Let's say that I like this one here. I can just click on that and then choose free download, and it'll download a high resolution image for me to use. Okay, so if you want to look for your own pictures, then feel free. That's a great place to go, pexels.com. Or you can use any of the ones that we provided for you, or you can have no pictures at all. Really just depends on your design. Okay. So any questions on that before we go on to the next restaurant? All right. So these are the example images. Like I said, don't copy these. You want to come up with your own design. These are just here to just look at this as an example. It's like, here's a way that someone took all that information and laid it out into a menu. Okay. And it's not the direction you should go in. Okay, so our second restaurant is called Starlight Bistro. Starlight Bistro, their thing is something by the sea, something great by the sea. Best friends Margot and Penny opened Starlight Bistro after not finding what they really wanted in a restaurant, which was healthy food. Starlight Bistro is a very small restaurant, decorated with holiday lights, star ornaments, and colorful prints. It is eclectic in food, entertainment, and the personalities on both sides of the counter. Shoes are optional as they're situated right on the beach. And for under $20, you can get a healthy meal with a fabulous view. Okay, so what are some adjectives that come to mind when you think of Starlight Bistro? Friendly, absolutely. They sound very friendly. Middle class, relaxed, reasonable, yeah. I'd throw in there colorful. Says that they have holiday lights and star ornaments and colorful prints all over the place. Probably a very colorful place. And it's open, tied into it's tied into the ocean, right? Like right there, right on the beach. People going without any shoes on. So that's and keep those in mind if you choose Starlight Bistro for yours. As artist, yeah, definitely a great tie-in for art. So these are the pictures that are provided with Starlight Bistro download, but again, you don't need to use them. You can do your own or none. And these are the examples that they put up for that one. Our last one is Walk and Roll, a Chinese and sushi restaurant. The Walk and Roll came about when restaurant owners Liu and Wen decided to stop competing for Orlando's best in Asian cuisine and instead join forces and create a unique Orlando dining experience. Families from around the world feel comfortable in the simple, contemporary black and white and red decor. Prices range from $8.95 to $15.95 for a plate that's certain to yield more than one meal. Oh yeah, nice. So what adjectives come to mind when you think about the Walk and Roll based on that description? Cheap, Eastern, Oriental, family is a big one, I would say, for sure. This is definitely a family-friendly place. And cheap, yeah, they're definitely very affordable, right? This is the kind of place you can take people and not worry about breaking the bank. One thing I want you to keep in mind, unique, yeah, they have a big clue for you right here in the description. They tell you that all the decor in the restaurant is contemporary and it's black, white, and red. So you got to think, how is my menu going to look in a place where everything around it is contemporary design and the colors are all black, white, and red, right? Okay, so these are the images that come with that one. And then this is the example menu that comes with that one. Oh yeah, nice. So that's the assignment in the what part of the assignment. We're going to look at how next. But any questions on the what part of it before we go on and jump into InDesign now? Okay. I'm going to open up InDesign. And I just reinstalled, I did a clean install on my computer a few weeks ago, so I haven't even used InDesign since I reinstalled it. So I'm going to have all the basic setups the way you guys will have it too, which is good because I'll show you a couple things you're going to want to adjust before getting in here. Okay, so this is the interface when you first open InDesign. To make a new document, I'm just going to click Create New. Now, just like we talked about, for those of you who are in Illustrator with me, the default measurement unit in InDesign is not the one we're going to be using in this class. In InDesign, it's picas. Picas are very small. Okay, so you don't want to accidentally set up your paper in picas. This is supposed to be 8.5 by 11 inches. Watch, let me show you something. I'm going to say 8.5. Let's change this to inches. I'm going to say 8.5 by 11. In picas, actually, no, sorry, let me do that the other way around. I'm going to say 8.5 by 11. So let's say I accidentally typed that in picas there. If I come and look at it in inches, I just made a document that's less than 1.5 inches wide and less than 2 inches tall. Very, very small, and be hard to work with, right? So don't accidentally set it up in picas. You can change it every single time right here by changing the drop down to inches. But if you want to change the defaults, just close this new document window. We want to start from this right here with no document open, no anything open, just this. And we're going to go to the preferences. So on a Windows computer, preferences are going to be under the Edit menu. On a Mac, it's under the InDesign CC menu. So you're going to go there, go to Preferences, and we're going to go to Units and Increments. And what we want to change is the horizontal and vertical right up here at the top. We don't want to change the origin. We're just going to change the horizontal to inches and the vertical to inches. Don't change the stroke or anything down there, just horizontal and vertical. Then I'm going to click OK, and then that will make it so that, whoops, don't want to open one, make a new one. So the inches is my default, and I'm ready to start working in inches. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, so here's how we need to set up our document. The instructions say it needs to be 8.5 by 11 inches. So 8.5 wide, 11 inches tall. It says it needs to be 2 pages. So I'm gonna go to pages here and I'm gonna change that to 2. Now it says turn off spreads or uncheck facing pages. That's this right here. We're gonna look at facing pages in week 3. It's a thing that's used when you're working with like spreads, like a magazine spread or a book spread. We don't want that in this, so we're gonna uncheck that box right there. And then we're going to go down to the margins. They're right here. I'm going to click to expand that section. And the margins are going to be 0.375 inches all around. As long as I have this little chain closed, if I change one, they'll all change. If it's open, they'll all individually do numbers. So I'm going to just close it and go here and say 0.375 inches. And if I just hit tab, it'll go to the next one and change them all. Okay. And then the last thing where it says bleed and slug, I need to set my bleed. We're not going to do a slug. Ignore that. It's going to be the bleed. The bleed needs to be 0.125 inches. And the same thing, as long as this chain is checked, I can just type it in one place and hit tab, and it'll change it everywhere. Okay, so 8.5 by 11 inches, 2 pages, facing pages unchecked, 3.375 inch margins, 0.125 inch bleeds. Any questions on that? All right, I'm going to click create. And here's my document. I'm going to close that. So here's my document. You can see I've got 2 pages. And if we zoom in, you're going to see when you're working in InDesign, you get little guides that show constantly and just show you what you're working with. They're not part of what's going to print or export. They're just there to help you work. This little purplish one around the inside, that's my margin, right? So a margin is the white space between the edge of the paper and text generally, or images sometimes. So that's my margin line. It shows there so I can see it when I'm working and make sure that, that I'm lining things up as I want to. The red line along the outside here is my bleed. If I put text, which we're going to talk about in a minute, let's just say I do some text, I see a little box around it, okay? You don't want to hide those permanently. You don't want to go up to view and grids and guides and hide guides. Some people do that, and the problem is you need these. These are useful when you're working in InDesign. But sometimes you want to hide them for a minute. Sometimes you just want them gone so you can see what your image is going to look like, your document is going to look like when it's done. And there's a really fast and easy shortcut for that. All you're going to do is just tap the letter W on your keyboard, and that hides all those guides and shows you a preview, a print preview or export preview of your finished document. And then when you're done looking at that and want to come back, you're just going to tap W again, and it's going to come back again. Okay, so remember that. W, keyboard shortcut for showing you a preview without the guides, also bringing the guides back. And generally, you want to work with the guides showing. Okay. Now, does anyone know what bleeds are for? We set these bleeds to 0.125. Like I said, it's this red line around the outside. Anyone know what a bleed is for? No, it's not like a margin, and it's not so much for distortion. I mean, well, it depends. It could be distortion. You could think of it that way, but it's a very specific type. Let me show you an example. Let's say that I'm doing a document that has a banner across the top. That banner's got a pink fill, and it has no stroke. Okay, and I'm just going to line that up with the edges of my document. And I'm like, awesome, I've got that ready to go. Well, here's the problem. Printing is not perfect. When papers run through a printer, sometimes they shift a tiny bit here and there. So what can happen is your paper might shift and you end up with a little white line on one side or another of the page. Or maybe it's on the side and on the top. That's not what I wanted, right? I wanted it to be, this will go to the edge. Maybe it's a big one. I want this to go to the edge, okay? So the solution for that is what's called bleeds. A bleed is an area outside of your page. And when you are creating documents for print, you want to have every single element that goes to the edge of the page actually go past the edge of the page to the bleed. Every single element. If it's the background color, it should go out to the bleeds. If it's a photo that's right up against the edge, it should go to the bleeds. No matter what it is, if it's touching the edge, it should go past the edge to the bleeds. So the way I would correctly set this up is I would create this banner like so, going out past my page to the bleeds. Then what happens is when the printer prints this, it prints a larger sheet of paper, and then he trims that paper down. So this pink goes out farther than the edge of the page, and then he trims that off, and we know that that's going to go right to the edge because he trimmed it off, right? And if you hit W, you'll see those edges disappear. The bleeds do, showing you what it looks like normally. Yeah, it's something you definitely have to wrap your brain around, but I'll get pretty much everything we do in this class uses them. So just get used to it for this. Think about anything you do, you want to go past the edge to that bleed, okay? Yeah, it's the same exact thing would happen with photos, depending on the printer. Yeah, it depends on the printer. But yeah, generally, if you're doing an edge to edge, you want to extend out to the bleed. Yeah. So keep that in mind when we're doing our menu this week, because everything needs to go to the bleeds. That's part of the grading. So when you do a background color, which all I do for a background color is just take my square tool, a rectangle tool, and just drag a big rectangle that fills bleed to bleed. Fill it in with whatever color I want for my background. And now I've got my background color. And again, when I hit W, I see it trimmed down to the actual page. W again shows me how I've got going to the bleeds. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay. So then let's talk about the next thing that we're going to be working with when we're doing this document. Yeah, exactly. So that's a great question. So Beth said, even if I had a stroke, take it to the bleed. So yeah, let's just say that let's say that my design was to have a background, maybe it's red, and I want a stroke like that. Whoop. Jump down to the next page. And I want a stroke going in a little bit from there, right? I want this black edge. I still need to take it to the bleed. So all I would need to do is just, honestly, the best way to do it so you can have it precise would be to just do a separate shape that was just a black stroke and put it the size you need it and make it go all the way to the bleed. But I could also just do that by increasing the size of the stroke until it went all the way to the bleed. Now I've got a bigger stroke inside than I had before, though, so I'd have to be careful how I did that. If I wanted a smaller stroke than that, I could just reduce the size of this stroke a little bit and then extend it to the bleed, and then less of the stroke is inside the page. But yeah, no matter what we're working with, you want whatever touches the edge to go out to the bleed, and because they're going to trim that bleed off. Okay. So the only reason, Shanley, that you would not put something to the bleed is if you wanted white space between it and the edge of the page. If you want white space there, then yeah, don't go to the bleed. But if you need it to touch the edge of the page, it needs to go to the bleed. Yeah, a white border. Like we're going to do a newsletter in weeks 3 and 4, and it's just got a regular white margin border, so we don't use the bleeds at all for that. Okay. Now, just like Illustrator, we've got a properties panel. This is new. In fact, this is the first time I've taught the class since they updated it, so I might sometimes be looking for exactly where they are because I'm used to the old layout, which was all my panels over here in the control panel at the top. But the properties panel, it's going to have things changing as we use them to be what we need. Okay, but we'll also bring out some other panels up from the window menu as we go through things as well. Okay, let's talk next about working with photos in Illustrator because, or sorry, Illustrator in InDesign, because working with photos in InDesign is different than you've probably ever worked with it in any other program. And at first it seems a little weird, but like once you get used to it and see what they're doing, it's fantastic. It's really, really useful. It's a great way to do photos for page layout, okay? So when we're dealing with photos in Illustrator, we're dealing with two things. We're dealing with a frame and we're dealing with the image itself, okay? It's two separate things. Now let me show you why. Over here in my tools, we just used the rectangle tool in order to make that background. Right above that is a rectangle tool with an X through the middle of it. This is called the rectangle frame tool. You would not use this tool to do a background shape, a color. You wouldn't use this tool to draw a banner. This is a frame. This is meant to have something put in it, like an image, okay? So if I do the rectangle tool, you'll see it has a black stroke set. If I do the rectangle frame tool, by default, there is no stroke. It just creates a rectangle with an X going through the middle of it, and that's how I can tell that it's a rectangle frame, okay? Now, I've made that this size. I can see over here the exact size of it, width and height right there. I can, adjust this just like I can anything else. But now that I have it on there, let's place an image into this frame. And the image I'm going to place, I want you to see the whole image so you see what this is doing. I'm going to place this honeybee image, okay? So you can see this is the whole image. A bee and a flower, black background, the whole thing. So I'm going to select my rectangle frame, and I'm going to go to File and Place. And I'm going to go find that image that I want to place in there. And I'm going to click Open. Now, what you're going to see is you're not seeing all that picture. You're actually seeing very little of it because it's a pretty big picture. The rectangle frame basically acts as a crop, but it's a mask. It's not actually changing the picture. It's just masking part of the picture. The idea being that we can make the frame exactly the size we want for our layout without having to do any destructive cropping to the image. We can place the image into the frame and have the frame, frame that image the way we need it for this layout and just place the image in there as it is without having to do any changes to the image itself, okay? So if I select my frame and I make this bigger, you're going to see it just shows more of my image. I'm basically making the window bigger. The window that you can see my image through is getting larger. Okay? If I, instead of working with those ones, if I go to the middle and click this little circle that shows up when I'm hovering on it, you'll see the bounding box turns brown, and it's all the way out here now. The bounding box is all the way out here because clicking that circle says, I want to work with the image, not the frame. So now I'm changing the image itself. I can use my arrow keys and change its position, or drag it, get it in the frame exactly the way I want it, click away, and now I'm working with the frame again, and I'm just seeing that part of the image that I want. Okay, so before I show you a couple of tricks with this, does that make sense so far? Okay. So there's a couple of cool shortcuts to make it easier for me to work with the image in the frame. Something I don't want to do is stretch or squish the image. So first of all, when I was resizing it manually here, I was holding Shift. Definitely want to hold Shift. But they've got some nice keyboard, there's some nice little shortcuts, not keyboard shortcuts, but shortcuts to help size and place the image for you in ways that you may want to do that. They're over here. When I've selected my image, they're over here in the Properties panel under Frame Fitting. I can also find them by right-clicking on the image and going to Fitting, or they're also under the Object menu and Fitting. Any of those go to the same things. I'm going to use the Properties panel, though. The first one here is called Fill Frame Proportionally. What fill frame proportionally means is I need the frame to stay the size it is. I want to see as much of the picture as I possibly can, but I don't want you to stretch or squish the picture to make it fit. So when I click that, it's going to size this so that I'm going to click so I can see the picture itself. You see how I've got a little brown coming out from the sides, because what it did is it made it, whoops, did the wrong button there. What it did is it made it so that the picture is the exact same height as the frame, but it couldn't make it the same width because then it would have squished the picture, because the frame doesn't have the same dimensions as the original picture, right? So it fit as much of that picture as it could in there, and then a little bit sticking out because otherwise we'll have to squish the picture. That's probably the most common one I use. Fill the frame proportionally. The next one is fit the content proportionally. This is, let's say this is a logo. I'm saying I need to see the whole picture. Like I can't have any of the picture hiding. So I want you to not stretch or squish the picture. That's what the proportionally means, but I need you to have the whole picture fit in the frame. I click that, it's going to adjust it so the whole picture is showing. Now in order to make this more visible what I'm doing, I'm going to make the frame a little more drastically different. So we'll do this. So here's fill the frame proportionally. And you can see I've got a lot of pictures sticking out of the top and the bottom that isn't showing, but it's the same width now. The next one is fit the content proportionally. Now it's showing me the whole picture, but there's a lot of frame on the left and right that isn't filled. That's not a problem. The frame's invisible when I print it, but there's frame over there that doesn't have anything in it. So that's only useful if I need to show the whole picture, and it doesn't matter if the frame's proportions aren't totally filled. The next one here, you don't ever really want to use unless it's something that it doesn't matter at all if it gets stretched. This is fit the content to the frame. It's going to stretch this out bad in order to make it fit. I don't want that, so I'm going to click this first one to get it back to the normal proportions again. The next one is fit the frame to the content. Now that can be useful. This is saying, I don't care what size the frame is. I want to show the whole picture. So I click that and it changes the size of my frame. So it's the exact same size as my image. Okay. This one here is center the image. So it'll just move it centered no matter what's going on otherwise. And this one here is what's called content aware. This is a cool one. I'm going to go back to how it was before I did any changes at all. So content aware is a new one. It looks at what's in the frame and makes it fit in a way that it thinks is showing likely all the content you want to show. So it examined it, and it's like, well, it probably wants to see the whole bee, probably wants to see the flower. So it made it fit in a way where it's seeing probably all the stuff that I care the most about showing. Okay, so that's under this frame fitting. These are shortcuts that I can use to make it fit within the frame in certain ways. Or I can just click this circle in the middle and manually adjust things however I see fit. Okay, any questions on that? Yeah, Microsoft Publisher takes a lot of things from this. InDesign's like the one that every actual publisher in the world uses, so Microsoft takes a lot of things from it. Yeah. Okay, so one last thing before we leave pictures. I want to show you how to tell if your picture's been stretched or squished a little bit. I'm going to stretch this a tiny bit. Okay, here's how I can tell if it's been stretched or squished. There is a panel called the Links panel. I'm going to go to Window, and I'm going to go to Links. And this shows me any pictures, any links that I have, any pictures I've linked into my image. If I select the picture I'm looking at right now and kind of pull this down so I can see more information, at the bottom it has the scale. So the scale is what's the size of it compared to the original. If you're seeing two numbers, it's been stretched or squished. Because what it's telling me is, well, this is 55.8% the original width of the image, and it's 44.8% the original height. So since width and height are different scales, it's stretched, it's squished. Easiest way to fix that, just select your image, go click this first one here, fill frame proportionally. It'll pop it back to the right proportions, and you can see now it's got one number there. It's 42.2% scaled. Okay, so that's a quick, easy way to kind of see if something's been stretched or squished. And there are points associated to not having your images stretched or squished, so it's good to double check that. All right, so that's images. Let's move on. Let's just talk about text a little bit. We're going to talk a ton about text next week and get into a lot more of the advanced stuff. We're going to talk about just a couple of basics right now. The type tool right here, the letter T gets you to the type tool as usual. I'm going to just drag a text box to work with. I'm going to fill this with placeholder text by going to type, fill with placeholder text, and it'll just put some text in there for me. When I have my type selected, in my properties panel, I get character information right here. Again, we're going to dig in a lot more to this stuff, but for now, for this week, all you really need to know is under the character panel, here's your fonts. There's the font type, whether it's bold, italic, that sort of thing. This is your size. This TT, the 12 points, that's your size. Here's your alignment down at the bottom. We're going to talk in more detail about those next week. But for the quiz this week, I want to make sure you guys are clear on 3 terms that are going to be on there, and that is tracking, letting, tracking, and kerning. Okay, so those are, I'm going to just stretch this out a little bit so we've got some extra room in there. Tracking is this one right here to the right of my font size. It's got an A sitting on an A. Okay, tracking is the space between the lines of text, and specifically it's the space from baseline to baseline. So basically the bottom of this text to the bottom of the next line up. So for example, the font size is 12 points right now. The tracking is 14.4. That's why there's a little extra space between each line of text. If I reduce this tracking, you'll see the text gets a lot closer together. If I increase it, the text gets further apart. Okay. Right now it's set on auto. Auto will automatically adjust your tracking based upon your font size to what it considers to be a good basic tracking number. But sometimes you'll want to just increase or decrease that a little bit based upon your design. So that's letting. Okay, sorry, did I say tracking? I meant let. So that's letting. I'll type it in the chat there. Any questions on letting? Okay. Tracking is the one right underneath letting. It has this little white box around the V and the A. Tracking is the uniform spacing between the characters side to side. So if I increase this, you'll see they all get a little further apart. If I decrease it, you'll see they all get a little closer together. Again, they're set to a good basic setting, but occasionally you might want a little more room or a little less room, depending on your design. And that's tracking. Okay. Now, kerning, I'm going to go to a big, I'm just going to type my name here. We're going to switch it to Times New Roman because I know Times New Roman has some kerning issues with my name. And I'm going to make it huge. So every font has things in it that kind of try to space out the letters from each other in a way that feels smooth and uniform, right? But the bigger your text gets, the more obvious there are flaws in that become. Like, for example, you'll see my M and E are pretty far apart compared to these R's that are touching each other, right? The J and the A are kind of far apart. So kerning is the spacing between 2 individual characters. If I put my cursor between that M and E, the kerning is the one right below the font size. I can reduce that to just move that E a little closer to the M. I can go between the R's and increase a little bit. It's a good idea to adjust your kerning if you're dealing with a headline, any large font. But if it's body text, if it's 14 points or under, you really don't want to do it because, first of all, it's so small, no one will even see the difference. And 2, it'll take you forever. But large type, it's a good idea to adjust your kerning, make sure you got nice, smooth spacing. Okay? Any questions on those at all? All right. So again, when you're doing your menu, you can make a rectangle to make your background. You can use these rectangle or underneath them are my ellipse tools. You've got the line segment tool. You can use all those to create whatever shapes or lines or divisions, colors you want to make your menu the way you want it. We've talked about text. We've talked about placing images. The logo, make sure all the logo's showing. So you'd want to use that fit content to frame for the logo so you can see the whole thing. So now let's talk about what we're going to do when you've finished your 2 designs. We've got, page 1, page 2. You do your designs on those 2 pages. I'm going to put, in order to demonstrate this, I'm going to put an image back on here. I'm going to go to File and Place. Okay, no problem, Kantiri. Definitely watch this part because you'll need it. But yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming when you could. I'm going to go ahead and just place that, and I'm going to say that I want it to fit the frame. I'll do the content-aware fit. Get that in place, okay? Now in my name, I'm going to go and I'm going to change this to a different font. I haven't even downloaded any new fonts yet. So all right, well, we'll just do alternate Gothic and see if it does it. All right. So let's just say this is my menu cover. It's a horrible menu cover. I will fail this assignment, but let's say this is it. And I'm ready to get ready to turn it in, okay? So first of all, I need to save this. And I should really want to save it at the beginning so you don't lose work if something happens partway through. Just save it just like normal. Go to File and Save. And I'm going to go ahead and just call this Example. And I'm going to save it to my desktop. Okay, now I want to show you something. On my desktop, I have 2 files. One of them says example.indd. One of them says example and has a bunch of garbage after it and has a lock on the icon. This lock file is a working file that the InDesign creates and uses itself when you have a document open. It is not your document. This is your document. So if you submit this lock file, I won't even be able to open it. I won't be able to do anything at all. And let me show you, when I bring this back up, let's move it over so you can see the files too. I'm going to close this document, and you'll see that lock file disappears. It's only there when the document's open and InDesign is using it. Okay, so it's this pink one that's your actual document. But let's just say, sorry, I'm sorry you're saying you didn't see it. What didn't you see, Beth? Are you guys seeing my desktop? Can you see the files out here? Or are you just seeing InDesign? Oh, so you don't see example INDD over to the side? You can see it. Yours might not be fitting within it, Beth. If you go up to, like in the menus, there's a thing where you can basically say, in the zoom menus, where you can say to like maximize the window within the screen within your window. But if you scroll to the side, you might see the side of mine. Here, I'll move it to the middle and see if you can see it better. Okay, perfect. All right, so I've got this InDesign file now, this example.indd. Oh, under the chat window, gotcha. So here's the problem. Let's just say that I want to show Beth my awesome menu cover, and I send her this file. Well, there's a couple of problems. One, this image, this B image, is not actually a part of this file. This B image is saved in my downloads folder, and InDesign is linking it into this position. So when I open this file, InDesign says, oh, hey, go find that B image, and it's supposed to show right here, right? That's one problem. Another problem is that fonts, you have to have the font in order for you to see the font, okay? You know, you're not going to want to embed these ones, Christina. This one is actually a better way to do this. Embedding, it just gets your file size all big and stuff, and also when it's not embedded, it's easier to do external editing in Photoshop and things like that. But so if I send, let's just say that Beth doesn't have this alternate Gothic number 3D. So when I send this to Beth and she opens it up, it's going to give her two warnings. It's going to say, okay, one, there's an image in here that you don't have. So I'll show you a little low resolution version of it, but you're not going to be able to see it very good. And there's a font that he used that you don't have too. So I'm going to substitute that with a font you do have. So now she's looking at my menu and it's got a totally different font and the image looks all crappy and she can print it, can export it. So like not a good thing. That's not what you want. So here's how you prepare an InDesign file to send it to someone, whether you're sending it to the printer or whether you're submitting it for your assignment or whatever you're doing. This is how you prepare an InDesign file to be sent. First, you have to save it like normal. So what we did so far is the first step. Next, we're going to create a package. The way we create a package is we go up to File, and we go down to Package. Okay? Now, this is a summary. As you move through things, you'll have more idea of what to do with this. This is a good way to troubleshoot things. For now, you can just ignore it, and you can just click Package right here. Now it asks us, what do you want to call the package? By default, it's the name of the InDesign file plus the word folder at the end. That works fine. Let's leave it like that. It asks you where you want to save the package. By default, it's the same place the file is saved. And then it has some options for creating the package. Don't change any of these. But if you have changed them for some reason, you want those first three checked on the top and these two down here checked. Okay? So again, all I'm doing here is just naming and location, which the name's fine, so I'm not even going to do that. Now I'm just going to click Package over here. And it gives me a warning telling me that fonts are copyrighted. That's fine. You can click Don't Show Again if you don't want to see this every time. And you just click OK. Now it's created a package. Okay? Now, this is my package. This folder that's called Example Folder, right? Or whatever you named your thing, folder. So at this point, we're going to ignore this file. This is the file I work with on my computer. This is the file I'm going to submit or send out. If I go into that file, you're going to see it's got a few things. It's got an InDesign file, a copy of the original InDesign file. It's got a PDF of my file. It's got what's called an IDML. An IDML is a kind of a generic file so that it can open in other programs in our InDesign. And then it's got a folder called Links. In the Links folder is a copy of every single picture that I used, that I linked in my image. Now, obviously the font I used is a regular one, so it didn't do this, but if I'd used a font that I downloaded or added later, I would also have a folder in here called Fonts, and it would have put a copy of my font in that folder as well. So that you have everything you need. Yeah. So now I send this folder to Beth, and Beth opens this folder and she double clicks on the InDesign file in it, and that opens up just fine because it goes to the links folder to get the links it needs. If there's fonts it needs, it goes to the fonts folder to get those. This package has everything needed for a printer or for someone else to open your InDesign file and see it exactly the way you intended it to be seen. Okay? So this is what we're going to submit. Yeah, basically all the elements that aren't built into the file. Yeah, all the elements that aren't built into this example file, it saves them separately, plus creates a PDF and an IDML file too. Yeah, it's a really great function. Now, there's only one more thing that we're going to have to be considering when we're submitting our work. And that is that you can't submit a folder. If I try to submit a folder, it's not going to let me. It's going to try to get me to pick a file in the folder. So I need to create a zip file from this folder before I submit it. I need to compress it, okay? Very easy to do. If you're on a Mac, all you do is select the folder, and then you can either right-click on it, which is, if you have a trackpad, that's clicking your trackpad with two fingers at the same time, and go to Compress. Or you can select the folder and go up to File and Compress. Either way, it's just a one-step thing. You choose that, and it makes a little zip file right here of the folder. It'll have the exact same name as the folder, and it'll say zip at the end. This you can submit. This is just a compressed file. When I download it, I double-click it, and I get a folder with everything in it. Okay, so again, select your folder, go to File and Compress. or right-click on your folder and go to compress. Either way works. Make sure you're doing the folder, though, not the original file or something in the folder. You want to be doing the folder itself. And then the zip file that shows up next to it is the one that you're actually going to submit. So on a PC, it's very similar, Christina. If you just right-click on the folder, it'll give you the option. I can't remember. The wording will either say compress, or I think it's actually into the create menu, if I remember. You right-click and then go to create, and it says create a zip file or create a compressed file. But it's somewhere under that right-click menu, and it'll either use the word compress or the word zip and it'll make a zip file for you the same way. Okay. So yeah. So package is the folder. So first, let's just save it normally. Then create a package, which is the folder. Then compress the folder and submit the compressed file. Okay, and you can come back and rewatch this ending if you're running into problems, or you can come to multi-session. But every single file we submit this mod is supposed to be a zip file or a compressed package. And in many future classes within design, it's the same way. So just definitely make sure you get in that habit, because otherwise points get deducted. Now, again, you can then resubmit it and get those back, but it's a very common thing that I see an initial deduction for. Okay? So that's everything that I have to cover for today. Do you guys have any questions for me at all before we call it a day? All right. Well, awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate you guys coming to these live sessions. Again, remember, come into our multi-session on Thursday from 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. if you need some help with anything. Or if you can't make that one, go into any of the other multi-sessions or get together with our learning coach or go into the Student Success Center. Any of us will be happy to help you out. And then remember that the initial post for the discussion is due tomorrow, Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. and then everything else by Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Otherwise, you guys have a fantastic rest of your week, and I will look forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday. Thanks. That's good, Christina. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.